In this video, we're going to learn about domain and range. Now, this is actually a big topic that we would generally spend more time on, but we're just going to cover sort of the very basics of it. And so we're going to talk about domain and range from points and tables. And we'd normally talk about domain and range in graphs and equations and all sorts of things. But for this year, we're just going to simplify a little bit. So here's what you need to know. Domain is just a word that means all the x values. And range is a word that means all the y values. Okay, and it's really just this simple. And you're gonna see, this is not a big complicated topic. Okay, now there's two rules you have to remember. Okay, number one, when you're listing all the x values and all the y values, no repeats. Okay, and you're gonna see in the example, no repeats. So if you have, let's say, 2 3s, you're not gonna list 3 twice, you're just gonna list it once. And then the other rule is numbers go in order. From least to greatest. Okay, now for example, I'm gonna list some numbers in order from least to greatest right now because there's just some common mistakes that get made. Let's say I have this set of numbers. I'm gonna list this set in order from least to greatest, and I just wanna make some observations for you here. It's on the negative end that people usually make some mistakes, but notice the number -15 is smaller than -6, right? If you're 2 feet deep in a hole, you're higher up than if you're 6 feet deep in a hole. And if you're 6 feet deep in a hole, you're higher up than if you're 15 feet deep in a hole, right? So these numbers are listed in order from least to greatest. Notice it's the negatives, and you can kind of see they sort of go backwards, you might say, right? So negatives are smaller than 0, and then positives are bigger than 0. Okay, but that's just in order from least to greatest. So let's take a look at some examples. And you're probably like, wait, what? Yeah, it's really this simple, so don't overthink it here. So let's say I have, here's a set of points, 0, 4, 2. Okay, so I'm going to list the domain. I'm going to list the domain of this set of points. What is the domain? Okay, let's see. The domain is all the x values. So all the x values are, right, here's my x, right? In a point, it's x and then y, x and then y, x and then y. So this is my domain right here. Okay, now there are no repeats here, right? None of these numbers repeat. And I'm going to list them in order from least to greatest. So I'm going to start with -3 because it's negative, it's the smallest. 0 is next, and then 4. And I'm just listing number, comma, right, and space, number, comma, space, number. Okay, which kind of matters how you list it on the computer. What about the range? Okay, the range is all the y values. So my range here, 4, 2, and -5. I'm going to list them in order from least to greatest. So -5 is the smallest because it's negative, then 2, then 4. That's it. That's this whole deal. Okay, here's another example. 3, -3, -3, 0, and 3, -5. Okay, so let's start with my domain. So let's see my domain here. I have this x value, this x value, and this x value. I notice there's actually 2 3s. It doesn't matter. If there's 2, I don't list it twice. So I just list so that all the possible x values, all the x values that are here, there's a -3, that's the smallest, and there's a 3. And that's all I would write. Okay, and then the range, I have a -3, a 0, and a -5. So the -5 is the smallest. Remember, with negative numbers, it's kind of like in reverse, right? -5 is smallest, then -3, then 0. That's it. Okay. Now the other possibility is you could be given a table. So a table looks like this. Let's say I would have. So let's say I had a table like this. Okay, and these are x values and y values. And generally a table is listed when the x values are already in order, sort of just like the general rule about how things go. So what's the domain? And what's the range? Oh, sorry, let me get back on camera here. Okay, and it's the same deal. It's exactly the same as what we just did with the points. The domain is the x value, so the domain is actually just all of these numbers, and the range is all of these numbers, and so I'm just going to list them according to my rules, which is to say I'm going to list them with no repeats and in order. Okay, so I'm going to start with my domain, and I notice the x values are already listed in order, so I'm just going to avoid my repeats. So -5, -3, there's another -3, I don't list it twice, 0, 2. And my range, let's see, so what's this? Now my range is out of order, so I have to find the smallest one first, which is -5. Then my next one is -3, and no more negatives, so now I'm to 0. And then I have 3 6s, 1, 2, 3, just list it once. Okay, let's do one more example, just to make sure that you really have enough examples to do all your practice problems. You could probably pause right here and just do this and then just double check and make sure you kind of nailed it, got the idea, right? But here my domain is these x values, and I notice there's just 7s, 8s, 9s just repeated. So there's my domain, and my range is just 1, 2s, and 3s just repeated. And that's it.